Maria was not just any maid, she was a quiet, gentle woman in her mid-30s, hired years ago to help around the house. She had no luxury, no wealth, no diamonds to her name, but what she carried in abundance was compassion. She had a way of turning silence into comfort, of making the most ordinary moments magical. While doctors injected needles and whispered clinical terms, Maria whispered fairy tales and laughter. She would bring small treats, a pink cupcake, a handmade paper crown, a balloon she had bought with her own savings from the market. Isabella's eyes would sparkle in those moments, a sparkle Alexander noticed less and less when he entered the room. Slowly, Isabella began to confide more in Maria than anyone else. It was one quiet afternoon, sunlight streaming through the curtains, when Maria sat on the edge of Isabella's bed and asked softly, "What do you dream of, little one?" Isabella's eyes lit up despite her frailty. "I dream of celebrating my next birthday," she whispered, her voice almost a sigh. "But the doctors say I might not be here." Her tiny fingers fidgeted with the hem of her blanket. Maria felt her chest tighten, tears pricking her eyes, but she smiled bravely and said, "Dreams are powerful, Isabella. And sometimes, even when doctors say no, life says yes. So let us dream together." From that day, Maria made it her mission to bring small pieces of joy into Isabella's final days, though in her heart, she hoped those days could somehow stretch into months, maybe even years. Alexander noticed the changes but didn't understand them. He would come home late, exhausted, briefcase in hand, and hear the sound of laughter drifting from Isabella's room. Laughter, something he hadn't heard from his daughter in weeks. Quietly, he would stand by the door, watching as Maria wore silly hats, acted out fairy tales, or even sang lullabies in a slightly broken but tender voice. Isabella would giggle, her cheeks flushing pink with delight, and in that glow Alexander saw life, not illness. But when he entered the room, the laughter would fade, replaced by his daughter's effort to be strong. He couldn't comprehend why his presence caused her to stiffen, while Maria's presence allowed her to blossom. His confusion grew into frustration. One evening, as he loosened his tie and sipped a glass of scotch in the study, he confronted Maria. "You're the maid, not a nanny, not a nurse," he said coldly. "Why does my daughter cling to you as if you're the only one who matters?" Maria, standing humbly with her hands clasped, looked him in the eye with quiet courage and said, "Because she doesn't need money right now, sir. She needs love. And love doesn't cost anything." The words pierced Alexander, but his pride shielded him from admitting the truth. He dismissed her with a wave of his hand, yet her words echoed in the empty chambers of his heart long after she. The days turned into weeks, and Isabella's health weakened further. There were moments when her breathing grew shallow, moments when Alexander feared she might slip away right in front of him. Doctors visited more often, shaking their heads, prescribing new pain relievers, but offering little hope. Yet somehow, every morning, Isabella smiled. She smiled because Maria had prepared something small but magical, a tiny paper crown on her pillow, a tray with her favorite pink cake, a storybook waiting to be read. These little acts stitched happiness into the cracks of pain. One rainy afternoon, Isabella asked Maria, "Do you think Daddy loves me?" The question shattered Maria's composure. She quickly nodded, brushing a strand of hair from the child's forehead. "Of course he does, Isabella. He loves you more than anything in the world." But Isabella shook her head gently. "Then why is he always gone? Why does he look so sad when he sees me?" Maria didn't know how to answer. She wanted to tell the truth, that Alexander's love was buried under layers of fear and guilt, but she could only whisper, "Sometimes love hides because it's afraid. But it's still there, stronger than you can imagine." Isabella smiled faintly, as though comforted, but Maria's heart broke with the weight of the father's absence. That night, Maria sat by her own small bed in the servants' quarters, hands folded in prayer. She prayed not for herself, but for the little girl upstairs. She prayed for a miracle, for strength, for time. And as she prayed, an idea began to form in her mind, an idea that might not cure Isabella's illness, but could give her something far greater, the chance to live her remaining days filled with joy, not sorrow. Maria decided that she would secretly prepare a grand surprise for Isabella, something that would make her feel like a princess in her final days. It would be risky, it would take everything she had, but she believed it was worth it. For the first time, Maria had a plan, one that could change the course of this tragic story. And as the rain poured outside, Alexander stood in the hallway, overhearing faint snippets of Maria's whispered prayers. His heart tightened with curiosity and unease. What was she planning? Why did his daughter smile only for her? A storm was brewing, not just outside the mansion walls, but inside the billionaire's soul, and soon, both father and maid would find themselves bound together by a mission far greater than wealth, pride, or duty, the mission to save a little girl's fading light. The story begins in a world where money buys almost everything but not the one thing a father desires most, time with his daughter. Alexander Moretti, a billionaire whose name echoed through the skyscrapers and stock markets of the world, lived a life insulated by glass towers, private jets, and the endless pursuit of wealth. His empire stretched across continents, his signature on a contract could change nations, and his phone never stopped buzzing with demands from CEOs, politicians, and investors. Yet in the midst of all this power, his own home was silent, cavernous, and cold, because the one who should have filled it with laughter, his little daughter, Isabella, was slowly fading away. Isabella was only 8 years old, a bright-eyed child with a heart full of wonder. She loved fairy tales, drawings, and the simple joy of blowing bubbles into the air. But her small body had been overtaken by a rare and merciless illness. Doctors, some of the best in the world, had come and gone, flown in on private jets and paid more money than most people would earn in a lifetime, and yet their verdict remained the same: Isabella had only 3 months left to live. Alexander had sat in a sterile white room, the beeping of machines surrounding him, when the doctor uttered the words that cracked his soul into 1,000 pieces: "Mr. Moretti, we've done all we can. Your daughter may only have weeks, maybe 3 months at best." In that moment, the billionaire who had never bent to the will of anyone felt powerless. He had fought governments, won wars in boardrooms, and tamed financial storms, but this was one battle his billions could not buy victory in. At home, Isabella's room was transformed into a miniature hospital. Machines beeped softly, tubes and wires connected her fragile body to drips and monitors, and her bed was surrounded by plush toys and drawings she had made when she still had the strength to hold a crayon. She tried to be brave for her father, smiling when he walked in, even though he rarely stayed longer than a few minutes. His guilt was hidden behind expensive suits and constant phone calls. He loved his daughter deeply, but he did not know how to show it, and every time he looked at her pale face, fear and helplessness drove him back to the safety of work. In those empty moments, when Alexander was gone, Isabella had one constant presence by her side: Maria, the maid.